In recent years, Republicans in Congress have pushed to mandate a single style of architecture in Washington.
High atop the Acropolis in Athens, Greece, stands one of the most magnificent and most aesthetically pleasing structures in the world, the Parthenon.
Under a proposal called the Beautifying Federal Civic Architecture Act, architects who designed federal buildings would be asked to use principles from Greek and Roman antiquity.
The design, the spacing of each stone is so perfect that it inspires just to look at. The proportions are so exact. For a large building, it is an amazing thing. And it lifts the spirit upward.
In 2020, former President Donald Trump also drafted an executive order titled Making Federal Buildings Beautiful Again. He's not alone in his fondness for Greek and Roman architecture. The alt-right corners of the internet are all about seeing Spartan culture as the hallmark of Western civilization.
I think, when you get nostalgia, you start to get political ideologies in disguise.
Hadass Steiner is a professor of architectural history and theory at SUNY Buffalo. She often asks her students whether they think architecture is political, and their responses tend to change with the times. But from her perspective,
I think that architecture is inherently political because it engages with social, political, and cultural constructs.
That's even true of deconstructivist architecture of the 1980s and 90s that promoted the absence of harmony or symmetry. But Steiner says architects can't hide from politics.
Like the old adage, to be apolitical is also to be political. And the deconstructionist movement was highly politicized in its desire for neutrality and to disassociate itself actually from more right-wing politics in deconstruction and literature.
Architecture that expresses a set of political values doesn't have to be a bad thing. Architecture that tries not to destroy the planet is good. You can find all sorts of examples of sustainable design, which is about reducing harm to the environment. Buildings made out of mud rather than steel or concrete. Places like Basel, Switzerland, where green spaces are mandatory on new buildings with flat roofs. A nonprofit in Norfolk, Virginia deliberately built their headquarters on a floodplain that's expected to be submerged in the coming decades because of rising tides. 13 News Now, a local station, reported on that.
Instead of trying to fight the floods, it'll welcome them, allowing for space to flow underneath. It'll have features like a special stormwater roof that'll collect and store rainwater to be reused in ways inside. It'll be able to sustain higher winds. Also, it's good for wildlife in the area. They're incorporated into the plan.
The nonprofit has agreed to demolish the building and leave once the water takes over. SUNY Buffalo's Hadass Steiner says architects are paying attention to social movements and expanding the definition of architecture.
If you can open up the way we use the environment, right? Architecture to all the ways we use the environment and the new technologies that enable those things, I think we can see optimism for the future.
Back at the U.S. Capitol, there's that push to go back to ancient Greek architecture. But another kind of movement is also underway. Washington appears to be rolling out clean energy rules adopted almost 2 decades ago. President George W. Bush had passed a law that included a mandate that new federal buildings be free of fossil fuels by 2030. So there's still time for the architects to get to work on that before the political tide turns again and we end up back in ancient Athens.
How were the ancient Greeks able to build something that looks so perfect?
For Philosophy Talk, I'm Holly J. McDede.